Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, The Forces of Evil. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. Dear viewers, we have been looking at the sources of evil, the concept of evil, the concept of good and its relationship in this world. Why, if there's a good God, God is good, He's all-powerful, why is there evil? And we said that the good which comes out of that evil is why that evil is, not for the evil itself. And we spoke about knowledge of good related to knowledge of evil, that without understanding what is evil, we can't really grasp what is good. And we spoke about the benefits which came from the evil in creating Satan. Disobedience of Adam producing a greater good, the repentance and the forgiveness of God. And throughout human life, we find God's attributes of mercy and grace and wisdom and justice, etc., manifest through our acts of good produced by evil elements and things, calamities, etc., etc. Then we started to look at the battle, the battleground, the earth, this world, and the elements, Satan and satanic forces, the evil amongst the jinn. Where did Satan come from? He was from the jinn, the world of the jinn, a world parallel to ours with beings invisible to us for the most part, but who have choices like we do, choices between good and evil. Those who choose good are believers, like those who choose good amongst us. Those who choose evil are disbelievers, like those who choose evil amongst us. And the same kind of desires that you find amongst people in this world, where those who are evil, they like to bring around themselves those who are evil. They can't appreciate those who are good. They look at them as being, a waste of time. They look at them as being fools, etc., etc. You find in the world of the jinn, the same elements are there. And they're not satisfied until everybody thinks the way they think and live lives the way they live their lives. Then we talked about the methods, the methodology of the forces of evil in drawing the forces of good into evil, trying to draw human beings into the evil way. The first method we looked at was that of creating doubts. And the first and greatest doubt we spoke about was the doubt created with regards to the Creator Himself, when Satan gets people to deny God's existence because of their doubts, whether it's the doubt about where evil came from, or it is science's ability to explain certain phenomena, so we don't need to use God anymore. We just said everything is by evolution. Though if a person were to go and look at evolution seriously, they would have to conclude that evolution does not explain why we're here. It cannot. It cannot explain it. The Big Bang, as we said, we gave the example, if one were to drop a bomb in a junkyard, it's not going to produce a car. Just as the Big Bang explosion of matter is not going to produce the earth and life. We spoke about the denial of God's existence, as Satan would come to us and ask us, who created Allah? Since Allah created the heavens, He created the earth, then who created Allah? These are the ways in which doubts may arise in our minds. And children will come and ask us that. For ourselves, we have to put that out of our minds and carry on. But when a child comes and asks us, well, who created Allah? We need to answer them. We need to give them an answer. Nobody created Allah. Allah is the creator. If somebody created Allah, then it means Allah needs a creator. The one who created Allah is the creator. So we give them some, answer of that nature. The second way in which the satanic forces create doubts amongst us, after creating doubts about God's existence in and of itself, is doubts about God's uniqueness, that He is the only one to whom we should pray, we should worship, etc. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ explained to us that the beginning of idolatry, and what is idolatry? Where we've found some other gods, some representatives of God, or put God in human form, whatever, and we worship these idols, believing in them one way or another. Where did this come from? It came in the time of Prophet Nuh. There were some righteous people whose names were Wad, Suwa', Yaghuth, Ya'uq, and Nasr. When these righteous people died, Satan came amongst the people and suggested to them that if they were to make images of these righteous people and placed it in the places where they used to gather, in their homes and where their graves or whatever, it would remind the people of these righteous people and remind them of the righteousness of these people and then cause them to do righteousness. So the people agreed to do this. And they went and made statues and pictures of these righteous people. And in their generation, whenever they would come across these statues, whenever they went to their gatherings, the places of gathering where the righteous people used to sit, and they saw the statue or they saw the picture, then it would remind them of some good, and then they would go and do some good. However, generations later, after these people died out, Satan then came back to the later generations and said to them, hey, you know, your foreparents, they used to worship these statues and pictures. And it was through their worship of these statues and pictures that the rain came in huge quantities, that the land bore fruit, cultivation, etc., etc. And the people began to worship these statues and idols. There's the doubt. Well, where did the rain come from, really? It was from this, creating that doubt in the minds of the people. And of course, when we look at issues like in the case of Prophet Moses, when he went to receive the Torah and he left behind his people with Harun. And what happened there when a Samiri, one of the followers of Moses, who got the people to gather up all their gold, jewelry and that, and he melted it down in a container, and he took up some dust, which he said was dust from this footprint of an angel, and he threw it into the mixed it up and poured it out, and he made a calf. When he made this calf and the people stood around it, and he told the people, well, this is actually the God which Prophet Moses has gone to worship. And Harun was saying there, no, this is not the case. He's saying, no, this is the God of Moses. Worship it. The people did not start to worship that calf until the calf said, moo. The calf mooed. They heard it make the sound of a normal living being, a normal living cow or calf. At that point, they fell down in worship. What happened here, of course, was that the satanic forces, either Satan himself or evil amongst the jinn, occupied, possessed that golden calf and made the sound. And as a result of that, the people thought somehow that this thing was alive, and they began to worship it. Again, doubts that others could be worshipped besides God, confirming in ignorance in the minds of people. And we find this phenomena happening around the world. You find, for example, a few years back, where Hindus who had taken the god Ganesh as their favorite god, he was god of good luck or whatever, worshipping him, part of their worship is to pour milk over the head of the idol. Ganesh is the elephant head god. He's got a human body and the head of an elephant. They'll pour milk on the top of it, and what they found in India and here in the Emirates and in the temple in London, etc., is that on one day, when they were pouring the milk, they found that the milk was being absorbed in the mouth of that idol. And when they started to put it right by the mouth, they found it was going in, as if the idol was drinking the milk. Now, scientists in India said, oh, this is just capillary action, the stone idols, because the little of holes and the molecules not that tight. There are spaces between the stone that allows this milk to go in, and it sucks what's behind it, and explanations. But the reality is that it didn't only happen with their stone idols. It happened with the metal ones too. Didn't explain it. Why it just happened on that day and not the day before or the day after. Again, that confirmed in the minds of those who worship Ganesh that Ganesh was a true god. Another one who could be worshipped besides God. Bring some good luck in your life. Get a Ganesh idol. Well, the reality is that the jinn, evil amongst the jinn, had occupied and possessed these idols throughout the world. And this was a part of a plot to confirm falsehood in the minds of the people as being true. Doubts, modern people, modern Indians being exposed to Western thought and other parts of the Western world and Western, knowledge, etc., start to have doubts. You find more and more doubts about worshiping these idols. You find young people are rejecting it. Why? They can see something wrong here. So, what can bring them back into line is a miracle, what appears to them to be some kind of a miracle. So, in this way, doubts were created in the minds of the people into thinking that this in fact is a God, so they continue to worship others besides Allah. The third area where the believers themselves become sectarian, splitting off and falling into different beliefs, over doubts about the existence, for example, of Satan himself. If you look into Christian theology today, much of the Christian theologians don't even believe in Satan anymore. This is just a personification of the forces of evil, they will say. It's not as an individual, doesn't exist. Not really. And you have so many other religions saying, it's just a force of evil. It's just an element, an evil element. But, not a person, not an individual, not a personality. This is one of the ways we deny even Satan's existence. And, of course, there's denial of the angels and the world of the jinn, denials of the prophets, denial of the judgment. In these areas that satanic forces can come and create doubts in people's minds, denying the prophets. You have people where they call deists, where they say, okay, God created the world, but he left it to run by itself. What does God need to get involved in our world for? Just created it and left it to run. So whatever religions we make up, it's all fake. It's all fake, made up. There's no religion. God didn't communicate his will to us. The prophets, they're fakes, not true people. This is part of the doubts created in the minds of the people, which will lead them then to make up their own forms of worship. And of course, these forms of worship may end up, most of them will end up deviant, worshiping other than Allah. And Allah tells us in the Quran, we have indeed appointed for every prophet an enemy, devils among humans and the jinn, inspiring one another with beautiful, deluding speech. This is the reality. And if your Lord had so willed, they would not have been able to do it. So leave them alone with their fabrications. It is by Allah's will that the jinn are able to do this. Allah willed it because there's a certain element of good to come from it which is much greater. But the fact is that it exists in our world. Pillars of faith, you find even Muslims questioning the belief in the angels. Why? Angels, Science has explained all the things that angels used to be, it's believed that angels used to do. We now have gravity, we now have magnetism, we now have a variety of different forces, Newton's laws and Einstein's theories and all these things to explain away what's happening here. So, angels, we don't need them anymore. Angels were around when we didn't know what were the causes of these things. But in denying the angels, one denies the world of the jinn. And in denying the world of the jinn, one really denies that whole essential principle of evil in our world. And then it becomes what you and I perceive as individuals. What is good is what you perceive to be good. You know, what is good relative to yourself, which may not be good relative to somebody else, you know. How do we establish criterions for good and evil? We are lost. Without believing in the prophets and the revelation which they brought and the guidance which they brought for humankind, then we left to ourselves are lost. Because what is good today becomes evil tomorrow. What's evil today becomes good tomorrow. This is how it is. In China, for example, gambling. When communism came in, it looked at gambling as a major evil. It should be wiped out, stamped out, you know, destroyed completely. It's a decadent, materialistic, capitalistic system. So it was banned totally. But today, the biggest industry there in China, pulling in billions of dollars, is the national lottery. Betting, gambling has become a way of life. Similarly, in the West, you know, when we consider pornography is evil. Years ago, it was totally forbidden, no nakedness, but now you can buy a national newspaper, The Sun in England. You can buy this newspaper, and second page, you've got a naked woman in front of you. Pornography has become mainstream, acceptable. Movie channels, you know, you have channels there where it's just corruption and pornography, you know, all-night channels, and children are exposed. And the internet, what's coming on over the internet, so much corruption. You know, anybody who checks his mailbox, you know, every day you'll get at least 10, 15 mails just offering, you know, pornography and corruption and et cetera, et cetera. Where is this coming from? This is coming from the world of the jinn and the evil forces. Forces that seek to promote corruption, because it is in corruption that we stay away from God, that we are kept away from God. So denial of the angels, denial of the jinn, denial of the prophets, and ultimately denial of the judgment. There is no judgment. This opens the door wide for corruption. Because if there is no judgment, this life is all there is, well, this is what Darwin's theory is saying, this is all life is all there is. We're animals just like the apes and the monkeys, etc. So we just make the best of it, you know. Back to the law of the jungle, strongest survive, you know, survival of the fittest, or however you put it, you know. No morality. Morality is whatever is good for us is good, whatever is good for the majority of us is good, whatever is not, you know. Corruption. No judgment. But no, there is a judgment. And it is because of that judgment that we should seek to do good. That we are accountable for our actions. What we do in this life, we will meet. Let us not delude ourselves into thinking that we can do any evil and not meet it again. That is the biggest delusion that we can ever fall into. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment. We've looked at some of the weapons, some of the strategies of the satanic forces, the evil forces in our lives, to swerve us from the path of righteousness and goodness, creating doubts, tashkik. There are a few more that we'll be looking at in order to complete this subject before going to the next area. In our coming segment, we'll start to look at more specific areas of our worship, especially the Muslims in our worship, where satanic forces can come and make worship a problem for us so as to cause us to give it up. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of our program, The Forces of Evil. And we hope that you'll continue to be with us in our coming segments and find out how to combat these forces, after knowing them, understanding how they operate, etc., finding out how do we combat them. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.